Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, technology, principles, applications. This video is about preparing for the coming pole shift. This is highly alternative information. Most of it we are given decades ago. And there's a lot of qualifiers I got to have for this. So first of all, this is just the opinion of this. Based on this model, this is an etheric magnetic energy model of the universe that says that we are in the midst of a pole shift. A pole shift is coming and it's necessary for humanity's survival and all this stuff. And so, first and foremost, though, is it's always, in my opinion anyway, follow your intuition, follow your guidance, follow your higher guidance, whatever you want to call it, your angelic guidance, your heart guidance, the guidance that you're given from above, whatever that looks like for you. That's, in my opinion, should always be first and foremost what you follow, especially when it comes to preparing for something like this. And I think it's incredibly important to not give in to fear, but to try to get as centered and focused as you can, and stay open-hearted to the best guidance for you, blah, blah, blah. So let me go over real quick what the sequence kind of events a little bit of according to this model of what's happening. So we're almost at halfway through this pole switch, this pole shift, if you will. 47% to be exact today. And don't ask me how I know that. So the first part of the process is relatively slow. And so right now, this planet is under a time, what you could call it, a compression of time sequence or event sequence compression. So we're in a compressed sequence right now, meaning that the events are being orchestrated, and really what's happening is nothing short of unbelievable. It's amazing. And after we get through this whole transition, people will have the understanding and realization of what we've just gone through and how incredibly amazing it really is of what has taken place and the assistance that we've been given. But none of that for now. It's the next part of this process, the time between events becomes shorter and shorter, and the events become more and more intense. So the next part is highly compressed and in a much shorter time frame than the first half of the process. And that's partly why we think, and that we've been given this information, that we are going to be going through all of this, like essentially in this decade. The latter half of this process is coming in this next few years. And so the intensity of everything kind of ramps up. And so as the stream of energy is completed through the planet, this is like a new poles, if you will, magnetic poles, but in this model it would be a new flow of energy it's more intense than the existing flow of energy, what are called the magnetic poles. In this model, that's a matter of energy that flows in and out of the planet, like through the planet. So a whole new stream of energy is being created right now and attracted and essentially burrowing through the planet, and it's a different resonance than our current magnetic stream that we have. And so it has a lot of interaction with the elements because it's a slightly different resonance, and so it's getting established, and once it breaks through, so you could say like the South Atlantic anomaly is the beginning, and then it's inside of the planet right now, however you want to picture that, but it'll get through to the other side of the planet somewhere like in the North Pacific region, and then it eventually will create a toroidal field that becomes established around the planet. Now when that happens, that new stream of energy they'll call it our new poles, our magnetic poles, will essentially take over, and the other one will fade out. It's being created on attract, just like everything in this process. You've got attract and you've got pressure. So it's got a tremendous amount of attract creating this new field, and then a tremendous amount of pressure being put on the planet as it becomes established and finalizes its process to have both poles intact, which will then establish a toroidal field around the planet. Now, that will have quite a destabilization of plates. And so the North Pacific region in particular could be quite interesting as to what happens. And so I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, as that process goes underway and we go through this changeover into a new streaming energy of magnetic poles, and the old poles essentially fade away, the planet will go through a brief reset. And so it'll be like, and there's even biblical predictions and other predictions from prophets that kind of coincide with this idea of a kind of a brief global planetary like reset, a brief global reset. And so part of that has to do with the consciousness of humanity. And when we get on the other side of that, it's almost like kind of like being rebirthed. Okay, so people will be on the other side of that, and it's kind of like you may be able to remember what happened before, but you kind of have to really struggle to remember what happened before. And then to kind of drum up the anger and the feelings or the stress of what happened before and all the fear, it'll be very difficult to do that. It's almost like being in a new body, almost like being rebirthed, and like, wow, what are we doing here? What's happening? What were we so angry about? What were we so scared about? We're all going to be okay. Cooperation will be a huge factor at that point. Humanity will cooperate tremendously. And this is kind of like the birth of enlightenment, if you will. So it'll take years and years for enlightenment to bloom and blossom, because there's so many levels to that. And some people will catch on immediately. Others it will be, of course, a bigger struggle for them to catch on. And so it's kind of like this whole idea of cooperation will be paramount, and it will be very prominent, and assistance will be huge. So with this new environment, with this new vibratory rate on the planet, and with the adjustment in humanity, this whole idea of other beings and higher dimensional beings being able to assist us in a more active manner will become more of a reality, partly because it's easier for them to interact. It's safer, it's easier for them to interact with us than at that level. And so however that manifests, however that plays out, there will be a tremendous amount of assistance on and around our planet with what we're going through and the transition we're going through. And then with the new ionosphere, like the video I just did, essentially the new ionosphere, there will be significantly more shielding from solar radiation. Now, and obviously electronics, especially high voltage electronics, most of that could take a very serious hit and be inoperable from that point forward. And so that's a really huge problem that could be for like our present technology. But in addition to that, though, there will be significant more shielding from solar radiation, and that will, according to what we've been told, that will trigger a mini ice age. Now, that's not a big deal from a magnetic energy point of view, because when the technology is established, the environment is almost irrelevant. But for people that are like living at higher latitudes, north and south latitudes, and higher I mean by like, you could say like 45, 50 and up, so fairly cold environments already, but they could find it very difficult to survive if they do not have the proper heating and technology to help them. And so there will be, and it's not like it's going to happen overnight, but there'll be a significant amount of migration from anyone that is existing at those higher latitudes, because that mini ice age will be around for quite some time. And now, so there's a couple different types of preparation to be involved in. There's kind of like the pre-pole shift preparation and the post-pole shift preparation. Pre-pole shift preparation is like humanity has not really gone through enlightenment yet. There's not really a cooperative attitude around the planet. There's a lot of looting. There's a lot of a lot of crazy ass things going on. But the level of preparation obviously is going to depend very, very much on your financial situation. But even more important than that is the guidance that you receive, because you could say the whole west coast of the United States, for example, is in serious, there could be very serious issues for the whole west coast of the United States. But each individual location could all vary tremendously on what they experience. So some of them may be perfectly fine, and some of them may be literally gone. And so depending, and you could say, well, I don't get any guidance. I meditate all the time and I feel like I get no guidance whatsoever. And a lot of people have said that to me, and I feel like my first response to that is, you probably don't need any guidance then at this moment. And when we do need the guidance, it typically comes to us in such a manner that we really can't even ignore it. We're so compelled to do whatever it is that we need to do. Now, but aside from that, if someone has all the money they need or want, and they have all the ability to prepare, I mean, you could say, well, the ideal scenario might be get away from any coastlines, get away from any dormant or active volcanoes, any dormant or active fault lines that could be particularly strong, and that includes obviously everything in California, but it could also include like the central part of the United States, and then be at least 100 miles away from any coastline, and then be at least 1,000 feet in elevation. So all of these little factors kind of come into play. If someone really has all the money they want, you could get a concrete reinforced dome home along with a dome greenhouse and go full on, go full prepper mode, where you're completely prepared. But the thing is, be prepared. If you're going to follow this model, one of the things that you might want to consider is be prepared to be off grid and without electricity. And so that might include like the food and water, or a source of water that you can treat, and you have the technology like the filtering to treat that water. So like food and water for like up to 2 years. And then there's a whole list of supplies that go into this, and I'm not going to go into that because it would take an hour to do the video. But just there's all kinds of survival supplies. It's medical supplies. It's supplies that come into play with all of this. But that idea of having like up to 2 years of food, now you may not even need that as an individual, and you may say, well, why would I get that? But if your guidance is telling you get 2 years of food and water and get enough for 4 people, it may be that after this whole pole shift and after this whole transition, before magnetic energy comes online, you may end up in a community of people, and that food may help maybe friends or family members or someone that you don't even know that you need to help take care of. So I mean, that's why the intuition and the guidance is so critical. And so yeah, if you can have a place that's away from a populated area, great. If you can't, if that's not in the financial situation, you've got to trust that you're being guided exactly the way you're supposed to be guided. And that's the most important thing. And you may not even need to prepare at all. And that's the whole point, is if you get very, very clear and you're in meditation and you're like, you know what, I feel fine right now, I don't need to prepare at all, everything's totally fine, then that's what, that's the right thing for you. Someone else may absolutely feel compelled to be 100% totally prepared, and that may be their guidance. So we all may be getting different types of guidance because of our situation, where we live, and what's really going to happen to that area. It may end up being perfectly safe. And so I know this is, maybe some people wanted more specific information, but it's very hard when you don't have, like, we don't know what's going to happen in each exact location. And so like the mountains of California may, for example, be perfectly fine. If someone lives in a mountain home, they're above 1,000 feet, they may still be there, everything may be perfectly fine. Maybe consider getting a boat at that point. I'm sorry, that's not funny. But it's just this whole idea of where you live and just sensing. And, if you really want to look into where the safest areas are, there's lots of different ideas. In the United States, probably east of the Rockies would be our typical recommendation, but there's probably so many locations west of the Rockies that are going to be perfectly safe as well. And so with that, please ask questions if you have questions on this stuff, and I'll try to answer them the best I can, like send in a message or just comment on the video with questions, and that's fine. I think that covers everything that I should be covering for this, but it is an exciting time. And so post pole shift could be, I mean, magnetic energy, obviously we believe and we're told many times that it will be emerging. Now, how fast that happens and how that gets distributed and who gets it first and all those crazy questions is so hard to answer. And that may be part of the reason why we were kind of given that example as a general rule to have like up to 2 years of food and water. And then the heat that would be necessary if you need heat, depending on where your location is, to survive and like to heat that or to cook that food or whatever it is. In some locations, you may not even need a source of heat because you're so solar ridden that it makes everything very doable and very livable. So that's kind of a lot of rambling. If I do another video on this, I don't know, if only if I'm guided to and more specific, but please send in any questions that you have. And this is kind of an exciting time, and I think we need to just stay focused, stay centered, and get ready for what's coming. So with that, I will see you next time.